Welcome to Sage, the Homeless Management Information System Reporting Repository. This video will focus on the new eligibility form, which is required for submissions and resubmissions of annual performance reports, or APRs. Let's begin by discussing what participant eligibility means and how HUD reviews participant eligibility. In general, to be eligible for assistance, the individual or family must meet the definition of homeless, be prioritized in accordance with the recipient's written standards for administering assistance, meet any additional eligibility criteria established by the recipient or subrecipient in the grant agreement or subrecipient agreement, for example, special projects serving veterans, families with children or survivors of domestic violence. Meet any additional requirements under the Notice of Funding Opportunity their grant was funded under. The eligibility form in Sage and this video primarily focus on a participant's eligibility based upon the definition of homelessness. Recipients must maintain records of participants meeting all eligibility requirements. COC, YHDP, and special NOFO-funded projects may only provide housing and services to persons who are experiencing homelessness as defined by HUD in the COC Program Interim Rule. This is important not only for compliance with federal regulations, but also to ensure that funding serves the most vulnerable in our communities. For more information about how HUD defines homelessness, visit www.hudexchange.info. HUD uses the information reported in Question 15 living situations of the APR CSV to determine if participants in the project appear to be eligible based on their prior living situation. HUD expects all persons to be entering from homeless situations. However, there are circumstances in which participants may enter from non-homeless living situations based on the categories in the APR, but still be eligible based on a different category of the homeless definition, such as Category 4, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. Their prior living situation would not necessarily be a shelter, safe haven, or other place not meant for habitation, but they would still meet the homelessness eligibility requirement. Since these persons do not appear to be eligible because of their prior living situation, HUD frequently sends back APRs to the recipient to provide an explanation about participant eligibility. To avoid multiple APR submissions, the new eligibility form provides recipients with the opportunity to proactively speak to the eligibility of participants whose prior living situation to enrollment does not appear to be a homeless situation. The eligibility form is required for all APRs from COC, YHDP, and special NOFO grants, except for HMIS dedicated grants, planning grants, or SSO coordinated entry grants. To complete the eligibility form, you will need to first upload the APR CSV to your report submission. Once this upload is complete, you can click on the Add link on your APR Launchpad to open the eligibility form. The eligibility form enables recipients to communicate to HUD about participant eligibility for individuals entering from non-homeless situations. Using the Q15 living situation section from the uploaded APR CSV, participants are grouped by living situation categories that closely mirror those on the APR CSV. Persons entering from a homeless situation or institutional situation are assumed to be eligible for the program. Note that this form and these assumptions for the purposes of the APR review process do not represent a determination of eligibility by HUD. Recipients must maintain documentation of eligibility for all participants in compliance with federal record-keeping requirements. To explain eligibility, text boxes are offered next to categories where persons are counted. Text boxes do not appear next to categories where zeros appear. When completing these explanations, do not enter any personally identifiable information, or PII, into Sage. This includes first names. Instead, speaking generally, indicate the reason for eligibility and how many participants the information refers to. For example, 4 persons were actively fleeing domestic violence. Before entering information on this screen, review the data for accuracy. If you believe corrections are necessary in your HMIS or comparable database to correct inaccurate prior living situations, leave this form and replace your APR CSV in Sage. Replacing the APR CSV will delete the eligibility form and replace it with a new one, and any comments entered will be cleared. However, you will be able to see what you previously entered below each text box. Now, let's look at some examples for how to complete the eligibility form in Sage. If no text boxes appear on your eligibility form, that means that all adults and heads of household who participated in the program entered from a literal homeless situation. You only need to save the form after reviewing it. In this event, a message will appear at the bottom of the form noting this. Here is a YHDP Supportive Services only project. 13 individuals are noted as having a prior living situation of a temporary situation other than transitional housing. The recipient knows that 10 of these 13 were youth at imminent risk of homelessness at project enrollment, and 3 persons were actively fleeing domestic violence. The recipient enters these comments in the provided text box. Next, 5 persons are listed as entering the project from a permanent housing situation. 2 of these youth are attempting to flee domestic violence. 3 are participants in a YHDP RRH project who just moved into their new unit and are receiving supportive services from this project. The recipient enters these comments in the corresponding text box. Finally, 2 youth preferred not to answer about their prior living situation. Both are actively fleeing domestic violence and self-reported this to the case manager at enrollment. These comments are entered in the text box. All persons now having a response on the form, the recipient clicks Save to complete the form. In this example, a COC permanent supportive housing project has 3 adults or heads of household who entered the project from a prior living situation of transitional housing. The recipient knows that all 3 of these participants entered transitional housing from an emergency shelter. Since the PSH project does not have a chronic homelessness requirement, these individuals are eligible for this PSH project. Regarding persons entering any project from a transitional housing living situation, the recipient may have to clarify how persons coming from transitional housing were able to be confirmed as eligible, based upon the funding application for the grant. For more information, consult the Notice of Funding Opportunity the grant was funded under. In Sage, help is always just one click away. Click on the question mark on any page to open the Help and Resources tab. Written guidance on how to complete the program eligibility form along with the rest of your APR can be found by selecting Reporting Guidance and then selecting the report type you need. You can also use the HUD Exchange to ask a question about using Sage. When you complete the AAQ form, select Sage in Step 2. This concludes the video. Thanks for watching.